Yeah, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for having me on the stream.
You're welcome.
How is my sound? Good enough?
It sounds very good.
All right. So I guess the format is that I get to ask a question. Is that it?
Well, the format is very, very simple. This is an opportunity to challenge Islam. So you can either challenge it directly, as in Islam is false because of such and such and such a thing, or you can challenge it indirectly to say, well, atheism is true, therefore Islam has to be false, or Christianity is true, therefore Islam must be false. Yeah? So it's that type of thing. So whatever you're coming with, whatever argument it is, argument it has to have some kind of ramification. Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know if my argument meets your criteria, but let me put it forth and then.
Well, what's
And
your
you,
worldview? Are you a Christian? You're an atheist? What are
oh,
you?
oh, yes, I am a Christian. I am a Christian.
Okay. So it's important for us to know you're a Christian to make sure that you're not employ double standards when you ask your questions or make your claims. But go on. So you're a Christian, yeah?
Yes.
I'm tempted to say why, but I'm not going to. Right. Go on. Make your point.
That's okay. We can talk about that later on if you
Oh, you
want.
don't really want to talk about that. But go on. Tell me, what's your point? What's your
Okay, so I have heard
Oh,
that in
great. That's not a great
Islam,
start.
yeah, that's why I said let me put it forth, and then you can tell me what you
Go on,
think.
then, go on, go on.
So I have heard that in Islam, you consider the Quran to be a miracle. Is that about right?
Yeah.
All right. So I don't necessarily have an argument, but I wanted to ask, why do you say it's a miracle?
Oh, that's a good question. Go on now. Who wants to take that?
I'll give it. I'll give it a quick stab. So thank you, firstly, for joining us on this stream. The Quran is a miracle from many different perspectives. I think the first perspective that we need to look at is the sociological impact of the Quran. The Quran was revealed in the 7th century in an area of the world that was pagan, hostile to monotheism, in an area of the world in which there was slavery, racism, all types of class warfare. And the Quran transforms the lives of these people over a very short period of time, so that this society, which had been pagan for a very long time, in which paganism was woven into every aspect of the society, including its cultural norms, all of that was destroyed, and you had pure monotheism, Tawheed, what we call it, the pure monotheistic belief in God. That clear monotheism is something unprecedented, and it was so powerful that it managed to shake not only Arabia, but the Persian Empire, the Roman Empire, and then over the next couple of centuries, the entire world. So the most powerful aspect of Islam is Tawheed, the oneness of God. That's the primary proof of Islam. And then we also get into predictions about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the predictions made in the Old Testament about him, the predictions that he made about the future. We also have the fact that there's a linguistic miracle of the Quran, there's a challenge of the Quran, which could not be met by the pagan Arabs. There's many different angles of looking at this, but I think the one I love to speak about, my friend, is that the Quran's pure monotheism is something that was very difficult to actually push in Arabia, yet miraculously, it transformed the entire area in a matter of 23 or so years. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand what you are saying, but I'm not sure that it answered my question, or maybe I should put a little bit more clarification into it.
Well, that didn't answer your question.
The I'm sorry?
That didn't answer your question.
No, no, it didn't. So the
What would,
narrative,
Why did that not answer your question?
right,
sorry,
right, yeah.
yeah,
So the narrative is that the Quran is from God.
okay, so
God, God,
sorry,
yeah.
let's just try and untangle some wires here. You
Mhm.
asked me, why do you believe the Quran's a miracle? I answered why the Quran's a miracle. Now, whether you find that persuasive or you don't find that persuasive, the first question is, did I answer your question for why I believe the Quran's a miracle?
Yes, you did answer it,
Well, he
but
did answer your question.
you did
Oh, did
answer it, but
I?
I would take your advice and say that it wasn't persuasive for me.
No, that wasn't my advice.
I
I
just don't
said
care.
your opinion.
Right. Yeah. So
Okay,
that
can I
wasn't persuasive for me.
can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah. Go
Where
ahead.
where in the history of the world have you seen anything equivalent to what I just described?
Where in the history of the world?
Have you seen anything equivalent to what I just described?
Oh yeah. I mean, if you want an equivalence, I think that I'm not a historian and a scholar, but I think
Don't
that
say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it.
oh, Hamza, let me finish.
Oh, he's got to say it.
Yeah. If you're asking for an equivalence, um, 700 years before Islam, you had Christianity. Christianity was born in a pagan environment.
Well, actually, my friend AJ, um, that claim about the miraculousness of, say, Jesus, or the miraculousness of the early Israelites, of the prophets of Israel, none of those things would contradict the Islamic claim, because we also believe them to be miracles. We believe them to be prophets. We believe them to also be people that are going to have a massive sociological impact. So one doesn't negate the other. Do you understand? From our perspective, if you say the impact of Jesus upon earth, the impact of Moses upon earth, the impact of Abraham upon earth was unprecedented in human history, I would completely concur with you, my friend. I would say, yes, that's true, because we also believe them to be prophets. Do you see
Well,
that it's not,
But
it doesn't?
that's not what he. One second. That's not what he said. He said.
then yeah,
He
then
said. He said. He said. He said. Christianity was born in a pagan environment. When Jesus was Jewish, his disciples were Jewish. Paul apparently was Jewish. Where are you getting paganism from?
right. So yeah, I mean, I was still trying to elaborate my answer when you interjected. So Subor asked me the question, where else in the world?
Yes,
On,
he said
or
700 years prior in
right,
a
and
pagan environment.
I was trying to point out to the fact that, right, if you're going to say that the Quran is a miracle because it did all these things sociologically, I was trying to say that
Sociologically.
sociologically, right? I was trying to say that 700 years prior, Christianity had done the same thing in the Roman Empire, right? When Christianity was formed, or when Christianity started, the Roman Empire was a dominant empire and it was pagan, right? The Romans worshipped many gods, right? Sometimes they believed that the Caesar was God.
No,
So
you
Christianity
flawed.
begins, and
AJ,
by
AJ,
the time you get to Islam,
AJ,
Christianity.
AJ, AJ.
Can I finish? I'm trying
No,
to
no,
answer.
no, you can't say what you're saying. It's
I'm
just not
trying to.
true.
No, I'm trying to answer Subor. I'm trying to answer Subor.
No, you're
Subor's
trying to answer
question.
support, but your premise is flawed.
How is it flawed? He's asking me, where
Okay,
else have you
Did the
seen?
Romans ban Judaism?
Well, his question is,
No, no,
where
did the Romans ban?
else?
One second. I'm just destroying your premise. Did the Romans ban Judaism?
I'm not making a premise.
No, but I'm
I'm
asking
answering.
you.
I'm
You
giving an
did make a premise.
example. I'm not making a premise.
No, 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 no.
I'm trying to
You,
answer
your
Subor's
premise,
question.
your premise, was this: that the Roman Empire, they controlled this place and they believed in many gods. But what you're implying in that, what you're saying is that because the Romans occupied Judea, they forced their pagan religion on the occupants of Judea, which is just not true.
No, that's not my premise. My
What is
premise
it?
is my premise is that 600, 700 years ago, before Islam, in that part of the world and in the world, which was mostly pagan, after 600, 700 years, Christianity had become a dominant religion in that
Okay,
environment.
AJ,
And
the issue.
so Subor, actually has agreed with me that yes, that is a fact. He will
How
agree
did he
with that.
agree with you?
They didn't. He
No, he
didn't
did
agree.
agree.
So
He did
He
agree.
didn't agree with you.
can I say something, AJ, which I think is a little bit confusing? So I'm trying to unconfuse this situation. The truthfulness of Islam is based upon the miracle of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, peace be upon him, and the miracle of the previous revelations. So to try and say, okay, I'm giving you an argument for why the Quran's a miracle, and then you point out, for example, the impact of Jesus. Now, one of the things that we would disagree about is the early Christians and what they actually believe. But nonetheless, let's just talk about the sociological impact. But do you see, from my perspective, if somebody says but there was also a phenomenal impact, not as powerful because you didn't. It's not the same thing, but a very powerful impact through Jesus, through Abraham, through Noah, through these other ancient prophets. Then do you see that in any case, the way that you put it forward, it doesn't negate my argument, it only amplifies my argument. Do you see it from my perspective?
I wasn't trying to negate your argument. You asked me for an example of where the examples that you gave had happened, right?
Can,
So
can
I'm
I
pointing
explain
out,
why?
yeah.
Sorry, can I explain why I disagree with you there? What I was saying was I was giving you an evidence for the impact of revelation, right? Now, for you to say when I'm putting out a challenge to you and I'm saying, can you provide me something like that in history? You should use something outside of my religious framework, right? Because you're essentially challenging what I'm saying. So if you're challenging what I'm saying, you have to use something outside of something I believe. Like, for example, you could say during the Aztecs or the Mayans or the Incas, there was this particular incident that happened, and this man rose up, say Lapu Lapu, and he spread this new religion, and this thing happened, that happened. But when you mention to challenge my point, a point that I concur with, then it's actually incoherent. You see?
I wasn't challenging your point. I was giving you an example. You asked for an example, and
Yeah,
I'm giving you an example.
but the example I was giving was an example to challenge my point. Do you see what I was doing?
Oh, okay. Well,
Do you see my point now?
right. I see your point. So you don't
Yeah.
agree with me that Christianity is a good example of having made that kind of impact on the Asian world?
Okay, so I think we're getting a bit confused here. I believe, like, as all Muslims do, that Jesus, peace be upon him, was a true messenger of God, and his impact, like the impact of other prophets, was miraculous upon this earth. The reason why I put out the challenge is for someone to say, outside of the impact of these prophets that came with revelation, what other thing do we have in human history to have that kind of impact? So, in order for you to meet the challenge, and if you didn't understand it as a challenge, that's absolutely fine. We're not going to knock you for that. In order for someone to meet that challenge, you have to give something outside of my religious framework. Do you see my point? Is that making sense? If not, I can repeat it.
No, no, that's fine.
Okay.
All right. So let me go back to what I wanted to get at. The narrative behind the Quran is that God or Allah, it comes from God or Allah to Jibril, and then Jibril to Muhammad. Is that correct? Is that an accurate
Sorry,
description of?
sorry, I muted myself. As in, it got come from Allah to angels to prophets. Yes.
Right, right. So if it's coming from Allah, right, how is that a miracle?
I don't
You
understand.
believe that the Quran is a miracle?
Well, what do you think a miracle is, AJ?
Yes.
How would you describe what a miracle is?
I would describe a miracle as a supernatural occurrence, as something that
A what?
occurs. I would define
Supernatural.
I would define a miracle as an event, right, that supersedes
Natural law.
supersedes normalcy or natural law. Yes.
Okay.
Right. So for example, Jesus turning water into wine, that would be a miracle.
Why do you believe Jesus turned water into wine?
I'm sorry?
Why do you believe Jesus turned water into wine?
No, I'm giving an example of a
I
miracle.
know, but remember the first thing I said to you when you first came on about double standards and such?
What do you mean?
You said you believe Jesus turned water into wine, yeah?
Right, I'm giving an example of a
I know.
miracle.
Do you believe Jesus turned water into wine?
Yes, yes.
Why?
Why do I believe that?
Yeah.
Oh, because of the accounts, because of
I
the
can't.
account that is given, because of the historical narrative that is given about it.
Where's the historical narrative given about it?
Oh, it's in one of the gospels. I don't have the exact verse in mind, but it's in one of the gospels.
Why do you believe that verse, that the gospel is reliable?
Oh, because the Gospels are written as a narrative, historical narrative of Jesus' life and ministry,
But were the authors
and
of the Gospels eyewitnesses?
some of them were.
Okay, so when you say historical, what are you talking about?
So I'm talking about some of the disciples writing about the history of the ministry and life of Jesus.
Which disciple wrote about the life and ministry of Jesus?
Right. So,
Now, which disciple wrote about the life and ministry of Jesus?
well, there's John,
John. Okay,
right?
you believe the author of John was disciple John?
Right. You're taking me out of my initial
No,
question.
no, no.
Yeah.
We're basically what we're doing to you is we're trying to understand why you believe what you believe.
Right. So the history of Jesus' life and ministry, right, is recorded down through the Gospels.
But this is the point. You've just repeated what I asked you. I'm asking you why you believe the Gospels are reliable.
Right. So the Gospels. I'm not obviously not a New Testament scholar, but our
You're not a
scholars.
You're not a New Testament scholar.
No, I'm not a New Testament scholar. I mean, you have to go to school for so many years and maybe even do a
Okay.
PhD, right? So historically, the scholars and the theologians have already done all the hard work, and they think that the Gospels are authentic because
No, no, no. The scholars,
some of the authors were disciples,
majority, no, no, no.
such as Go ahead, go
Consensus,
ahead.
hey Jay, the consensus amongst the scholars is that the authorship is anonymous.
What scholars?
Which scholars believe it's not anonymous?
Um,
You're the Christian here. Which
right,
scholars? Which
right.
scholars say that Mark was a eyewitness disciple of Jesus?
I'll give you one, and then you'll give me one. Is that fair?
No, you tell me which scholar says Mark was an eyewitness of Jesus.
Not Mark. I said that some of
Well,
them.
Mark is the first gospel.
Mark is the first gospel,
Yeah,
but there are four gospels, right?
right. Matthew copies from Mark. Luke copies from Mark. So you got the synoptic gospels where you've got Matthew and Luke both copying from Mark. If Mark is not a disciple of Jesus, why are they copying from him?
Where do you get that they're copying from
You're
Mark?
not aware of this.
What I am aware of is that not all of them were eyewitness because you have four of them, right?
No,
And
no.
I
What I'm
think that
saying to you is
two,
this. Are you
yes.
not aware that the author of the Gospel of Matthew and the author of the Gospel of Luke both copied from the Gospel of Mark? Are you not aware of that?
Well, that's an assertion you're making. I'm not sure if that is
No,
correct.
no, no. But are you not aware of that?
I'm not aware of that. Yeah, and I'm not
Right.
sure if that is true.
If you
Right.
were aware of that, would you then question whether or not Matthew is a disciple of Jesus?
Well, I would question it, but it wouldn't mean that he
Good.
wasn't a disciple, right?
No, no, no. But if Matthew's copying from Mark and Matthew's disciple of Jesus and Mark is not a disciple of Jesus, then why would a disciple of Jesus need to copy from a man who's not a disciple of Jesus?
Right. That's why I don't know if what your assertion is
All
true
right.
or not,
So
right?
I just need to pop away for a second. Mr. Yemeni, can you enlighten our friend as to why Matthew copying from Mark demonstrates that Matthew is not a disciple of Jesus? Good luck. It's easy. It's easy. Do it.
All right. He can try to answer it, but basically, Hamza, you've taken me off on a detour, right, off of the my original question. So we are now in an area which I didn't come to ask,
Relax, AJ.
right?
Relax, AJ. Relax.
But
Go on.
you understand that,
Yemi's gonna
yeah.
because here's the thing. You see, your belief, what as a Christian, is based upon these premises that you believe are true. So, for example, a very important part of what you believe to be true is that the narrative of the lives and miracles of Jesus Christ was written and recorded by his disciples. Well, I mean, that seems very important to you, which is why I asked the question. If it wasn't, would it make a difference to you? And you kind of was like, yeah, but that's just your assertion. So now we're going to demonstrate that what you hold as a premise to your whole worldview isn't true.
After we've gone through my original question, which Subua was trying to answer, we can deal with that. Yeah, because I came here to ask a specific question and to discuss a specific point,
Don't let
and
bully you, Yemen. Come on,
and
assert
and
yourself.
you and you're taking it off on a detour. I'm more than happy to engage with Subor on this issue you've raised,
The
but
thing is,
that is not what I come here for, right?
no, but the thing is, it's not a detour because the first question you asked Sabur was, why do you believe that the Quran is a miracle, right? And so he answered that. So the question was asked to you in return, why do you believe that Jesus, peace be upon him, turned water into wine? And you went because it's in the Bible, right? It's in the New Testament. So when Sabur answered you regarding why the Quran is a miracle, he gave you reasons for it. So in return, that question was asked, what is your reason for believing that, the Bible is to be trusted as a source that accurately documents the miracles of Jesus? And that's where the trail led down to. So just quickly, and we will go back to what your discussion with Sabor, inshallah. Matthew and Luke, about 70% of the material in Matthew and Luke has been copied from Mark. This is well accounted across the across New Testament scholars, right? That's what they've come to conclude, that 70% of Matthew and Luke are copied from Mark. Not only that, Matthew and Luke attempted to, sort of change aspects of the story of the life of Jesus because they wanted to target a specific audience, right? So, for example, or to fulfill certain prophecies. So, for example, Matthew was appealing to a prophecy that doesn't exist in the Old Testament about Jesus being a Nazarene, and created a story about how Jesus went to, his birth and everything, King Herod slaughtering the babies and all of that, essentially creating this story in order for him to be a Nazarene. Okay, whereas Luke tries to attempt to have a prophecy fulfilled in Micah chapter 5 about him being born in Bethlehem. So in order to do that, he had to speak about Quirinius and the consensus in Syria, which happened in 6 AD. So between the two stories, you actually have the birth of Jesus occurring at roughly 4 BC and 6 AD across both gospel accounts. So we can see that there is an intention behind each author to fulfill or to direct the story to suit a particular audience or to force a specific narrative. So that's just briefly. So what we're saying to you is that what you hold to be authoritative and accurate to determine what Jesus has said, what Jesus did, the miracles, the teachings, and all of that, that is dubious. Whereas what Sabor has mentioned regarding the Quran, this is laid in historical reality in terms of what it's done to the society, how the beliefs evolved and spread across the land, and all the things that he's mentioned. Is that understood?
Yeah, that is why I didn't want us to go down this route, right? Because then, like I said, it takes me off my original topic.
It's the same topic.
No, it's not the same. Now you're talking about the authenticity or the reliability of the Gospels, and like I said, I'm not an NT scholar, right? And I don't think you're an NT scholar either. So if you're making assertions that Matthew copied X amount of material from Mark, you're actually going to have to demonstrate that.
These are
You're
not
going to,
these are, I'm quoting New Testament scholarship.
like who? Because there are many of them, and sometimes they don't always agree. Just like you, some of your imams and sheikhs don't always
Oh,
agree.
this is a consensus among New Testament scholars regarding
That's why you're going to have to give me names. That's why you're going to have to give me
Bruce,
references and
Bruce
sources.
Metzger. Bruce Metzger, Bart Ehrman, and among others, right?
And Bart Ehrman is an atheist scholar, correct? He first
He's a
specializes
New
in the.
Testament. He's a New Testament scholar. You don't
He's a
have to.
New Testament scholar, yes, but he's also an atheist.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, it does matter,
Well,
right?
okay, fine.
And
It doesn't matter. Look, AJ, if you're going to say that it only matters if a Christian scholar, fine. Bruce Metzger died a conservative Christian, and he said the same thing.
and there
When
are other scholars that disagree with these
no, this
scholars.
is a consensus. This is a consensus among New Testament scholars that the material in Matthew and Luke, 70% of it has been taken from Mark, and that the Q document, right, doesn't even reference the Passion narrative.
Okay.
Right, this is a consensus. You can go check it out. We're not saying to you to believe us blindly. Go check it out. But don't come on here and say these are assertions. We are quoting facts.
Oh, you haven't shown me any quotation at all. How do you want to do this? Do you want me to go back to my original topic, or do you want to continue on this line of discussion?
No, this is all the same topic. Again, we're talking about the miracles, right? That was what you were referring to. So when
For the purpose of our discussion, let's pretend that the miracles are the miracles, right? So Sibora, I think Hamza was asking me.
No, AJ, look, this is not how we ever discuss with people. We don't.
Let me finish the point, and then it'll be much clearer. It'll be much clearer. I was asking Subor why the Quran is a miracle. Hamza interjects and asks me what I think a miracle is, right? So I give that definition, and I try to give an example. You may not accept the New Testament as reliable, but just so we can stay on track, just accept the example, right? If water is standing to wine, that's a miracle. I'm just giving an example, okay? Whether Jesus did it or somebody else does it, that's a miracle. So I'm just giving an example of a miracle, right? So going back to my original question, why is the Quran a miracle? The answer that Subor gave me doesn't really answer it, because he gave me the impact. You're telling me that the impact was miraculous. I'm trying to find out why the Quran itself is miraculous, not the impact of the Quran.
No, okay. That's the thing. He did actually answer it, right? He's saying that one of the miracles of the Quran is the impact that you had on the world, right? First in the first in the city of Mecca, then the Arabian Peninsula, and the world as a whole, in a very short space of time. And so when he asked you, he gave a few examples of why the Quran is a miracle, and then he came back and asked you, do you have anything that has had the same sort of impact? Is there a comparison to the Quran, right, in terms of its miraculous nature? And you went and said, yeah, the 600 years ago, the Bible, right, or the New Testament, right?
No, he wasn't asking about the material that had the same impact. He was asking for an example of something in history that has had the
miracle,
same, yeah,
of a miracle, right, that has had the same sort of impact. And you said 600 years ago with Jesus, right?
With Christianity more broadly.
Okay. First and foremost, there wasn't a religion called Christianity in the first century. There was no such thing, right? The term Christian came after Jesus, right? It wasn't during Jesus's lifetime. So when you're talking about Christianity as it was as it became, was an adoption of pagan tradition into a monotheistic faith, the same way it was with the Jews. And when you made several historical errors, right? You said, oh, well, Christianity was also born in a pagan society. It wasn't, because Jesus was very explicit that his message was to a monotheistic people, that he came to the Jews who were monotheists. So regardless of whether it was part of, Judea was part of the Roman Empire or not, the message wasn't for a pagan people, whereas the Quran was a message for all the pagans. So in the first hurdle, it's already failed in terms of comparison. Now, we're not saying that Jesus has failed as a prophet or anything. He's done his mission. But in terms of the scripture, the New Testament wasn't a miracle, right? Because the New Testament wasn't even from Jesus. The gospel was from Jesus, and unfortunately, you don't have that. The Quran cannot be compared to the New Testament. So the question, I'm going to repeat Subur's question. What is there that compares to the miraculous nature of the Quran?
Right. So the examples that Subur gave, he gave the impact of the Quran.
Okay, you're stuck on that. What do you call it?
Right.
Right. Let's go through. Let's go.
Now,
Let's go.
when you
Go on.
give the impact of the Quran on
What was the impact?
the sociological impact of the Quran, right? That to me is not a miracle. I want to know why you think that the Quran itself
Why is the impact?
is a miracle.
Why is it? Why is the impact not a miracle?
Right. Because a miracle, as we have previously defined, is an event that supersedes natural law.
AJ.
Right. So
Have you read the Quran?
So an example of a miracle,
AJ.
if it happens.
AJ, have you read the Quran?
I haven't read all of the Quran.
Have you read the Quran?
I haven't read. I've read parts of it.
Highlighted parts, yeah. Okay. Could an illiterate man have written the Quran?
Could what?
Could an illiterate man have written the Quran?
An illiterate man.
Yes.
An illiterate man cannot write any piece of literature. That is what illiteracy means.
Could an illiterate man have produced the Quran?
An illiterate person cannot produce any piece of literature.
Right. Was Muhammad, peace and peace upon him, illiterate?
I don't know about Muhammad's background. Was he illiterate?
If he was illiterate, would you say him producing the Quran's a miracle?
How did he produce it?
No. If he's illiterate and he produced the Quran, would you consider that a miracle?
I want to know how he produced it.
I'm not telling you how. I'm asking you if he did.
How did he do it? I would have to know. A miracle is that which supersedes natural law.
He revealed the Quran.
I would want to know how he did it.
I'm asking a very simple question here. Because in your paradigm, do you believe Muhammad authored the Quran?
You mean as in write it down?
In your authored it. He's the source of the information for it. Do you believe that or not?
Well, you say your narrative is that.
Not my narrative. Your paradigm. Yeah. Your paradigm. Who authored the Quran according to you?
I don't know who authored the Quran.
You don't know who authored the Quran?
No. How would I know who?
Who do you believe authored the Quran?
I'm sorry?
Who do you believe authored the Quran?
I don't know who authored it. What is
your
narrative?
Paradigm? Who do you believe authored the Quran?
I don't know who authored the Quran.
Okay. So
what is the historical narrative?
The historical evidence is that Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him, was the source of the Quran.
So right? So Allah is not the source.
No, one second. Historical analysis, it was the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing upon him, who revealed the Quran. Yes, you agree with that?
So it's not Allah.
Would you agree with that or not?
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
We believe the Prophet Muhammad revealed the Quran to his companions, yes?
Okay, that's what you believe.
Right. What we believe is this, yes?
Okay.
Would it be a miracle if the man revealing this Quran was illiterate?
No.
Why not?
How did he reveal it? If you tell me how he revealed it, then
You said no. Why not? Yeah. Why is an illiterate man revealing the Quran not miraculous?
Because there's nothing miraculous about being able to speak.
Producing the Quran and the content within the Quran and the information the Quran contains over a 23-year period during all sorts of events going on in his life is not miraculous to be done by a man who cannot read or write.
No, it's not. It's not miraculous.
You're a waste of time, mate.
If you said that he, if you said
You're a
that he
waste of time. If you can't just be honest and intellectually honest and just concede, well, fair enough. If he did that, that is kind of miraculous, man. No, it's not. Why? Because it goes against my agenda.
You know, I wanted to ask him what makes Christianity not pagan.
What's that?
I wanted to ask him what makes Christianity not pagan, because he said it was like it was the solution to paganism, and I'm like, really? How?
It wasn't even revealed for pagans. It's like, to be honest, it's like he had no information about anything, history, theology, nothing.
He wanted me to argue for him. He wanted me to produce his arguments. It's very simple. If an illiterate man in your paradigm, because we know they think Muhammad wrote the Quran. What was he acting like? Oh, I don't know. He's a Christian man. He's clearly read the bits in the Quran which the anti-Islamic sites have told him to read. So he's come with this narrative, and he's trying to say that what's miraculous about the book. And I'm just asking a very simple question: if the man who authored the book or revealed this information was illiterate, would you consider that miraculous?
Yeah,
so your answer was very good as well. The transformative nature, the sociology of it. Never heard that.
There's something I was thinking about when he left. When Keith Ward, the Oxford philosopher, was asked this question by Paul from Blogging Theology. I mean, who is this man? Who is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to you? He acknowledged that he believed he was, sent by God, essentially, in so many words. So, even if a Christian like Keith doesn't accept the Prophet ﷺ as a prophet of God, he can at least see, okay, I can see it. I can see, there's a connection to God. And I remember having a conversation with a very honest Jewish person in Speaker's Corner. And again, he said the same thing to me. I said, okay, who do you believe this man to be? And he said, he's a prophet of God. He said, I don't accept him as a prophet, but I believe he's a prophet of God. So the thing is, what does Allah say? Allah says that they recognize the true ones. They recognize the prophet as, I don't remember the exact wording, but as, someone would recognize their son or something like this. So what we have to keep in mind is that it is incredibly difficult to explain away this man that comes 600-700 years after the death, not the death, after the supposed, they say the death of Isa alayhi salam, after, he went up to heaven, that, what happened? Like, this man came and a large part of the world was transformed. It's very difficult to explain. And, something to really keep in mind is that human history teaches us that human nature is one of the most difficult things to break. So, for example, Genghis Khan, the Mongols had a code called Yasa, right? And that code continued even after a large part of the Mongol Empire was Muslim, and even Mongols accepted Islam. It's very hard for them to get rid of their ancient code of Yasa. So even the conquest of Genghis Khan, they were all done within the context of the background of the Mongol culture, the code of Yasa. But when it comes to the Prophet ﷺ, he conquered Rome and Persia, as in his followers conquered Rome and Persia, but they did it with a brand new code. They did it with the Sharia. They broke shirk, and they applied tawheed. They broke the shackles of racism and slavery and class warfare, and they had an equal society. All these things, you can't explain them. They're very, very hard to explain. And anyone that I believe is sincere and has a connection to God will recognize that this is nothing less than miraculous.